All right, looks like we're live. So, howdy. My name's Chip, and I'm one of the founders of Stomp Software, the makers of BlogStomp and Album Stomp and Album Proofer. Excuse me. If you're joining us today, thanks and welcome. This webinar will be an introduction to BlogStomp, which is our blog prep and publishing tool. So feel free to leave questions in the comments. We've got a team here that will be answering those either inline in the comment section, or they'll be feeding some to me later on in this presentation during our Q&A section. So as we give a minute to let everybody log on and click up the link, I'll give just a brief history of our company. BlogStomp was founded in 2009. Excuse me, and it began its life as a set of actions for Photoshop. We got really frustrated at the tedious process of taking high-res files out of our camera, resizing them down, adding sharpening, putting a border or a stroke around it, dropping a watermark on, and then doing all that step by step individually for each image. So we created BlogStomp to make that process faster and easier and, frankly, a bit more fun. And so from there, it morphed a little bit over time. In 2011, we launched our first standalone software app. So got it outside of Photoshop, and kind of off to the races after that. We've added improvements over the years. In 2014, we released Album Stomp as an album design tool that used a lot of the behind the scenes and the interface that BlogStomp made somewhat familiar, and an Album Proofer, which is an album proofing solution, an online tool to accompany Album Stomp. So last February, we launched BlogStomp 3, which is the specific app that we'll be talking about today. So we'll do kind of a walkthrough, kind of as a fresh install walkthrough of the app, and then show you some cool tips and tricks and some stuff that we've built into this version that may or may not have existed in previous versions. So glad you're here, glad you're joining us. Excuse me. And yeah, looking forward to the conversations that this little presentation will spawn. So with that, I guess if you guys are all ready, let's jump into it. I am going to launch BlogStomp 3. And off we go. So when you first launch BlogStomp, this is the interface you'll see. In this main app window, it starts with a bit of a setup wizard. Because BlogStomp was created to prepare images for use online or on the blog, the first thing we want to make sure that you know, or that you enter correctly, is the size that you'll need for your blog. So we start off by asking that question. If you know what size your blog needs, if you know your blog's column width, if you know what size you're going to need to throw up there, then you can click yes and enter that in the next pane. If you don't, simply hit nope. And we've got a list of popular blog templates or themes or platforms that you can choose from. My blog is a ProPhoto, and I happen to know that the standard width of the column on my blog is 900 pixels. Now, one of the things I love about ProPhoto blogs is that they are retina responsive. And what that means is that they will evaluate what type of monitor your viewers are viewing your website on. And if they're on a retina monitor, it will actually display a 2x upsized version of your photos so that it looks great on a retina screen. And if your viewers are on a standard size monitor, then it will show them a 1/2 size, right? So if I want my images to stomp at the equivalent of 900 pixels, or to display at the equivalent of 900 pixels for my ProPhoto, then I'm going to stomp them at 1800 pixels so that my blog can take care of the rest. So I'm going to hit next. And there's some, I'll show you in a minute how we can go into the settings pane and make adjustments there in the app. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring some images in. You can do that in one of three ways. You can either go to the top of your monitor and go to the File menu and select Import Images, or you can hit this little plus sign right here and it'll open up a navigation window. Or my personal favorite, I'm on a Mac, so I'm coming from Finder, where my photos are, and I'm just going to drag them in to the left-hand thumbnail pane, and you'll see them all load in. I've got just under 100 images that are coming in right now. So it's bringing those all in, and it's beginning an initial resize to get them to the appropriate size for my output. And then you can see you can click through the images individually in this pane here. And if you want to group images together, you can use, on a Mac, you can use Command click, or on a PC, it's Control click. And then whenever you have multiple images selected, you'll see on the right-hand side here, you'll see different options come up for different layout options. So you can click through these and see different ways your images can look, or you can use the Mix It Up function, and it will do that automatically. It'll cycle through. You can either have it set to rotate the images order, so you've got two on the left, one on the right, and it will stay in that format as you cycle through. Or you can change it to where it'll cycle through the different layout options, and I'll show you that in settings in just a minute. So you've got the layout that you want, but you want to change the placement of images. Super easy. You can double click on one image. Our wizard's helping me out. You can double click on an image and then drag it over the other image to swap their placement. This is a new BlogStomp 3 feature that I personally really love, because it just makes it super fast to get just the arrangements I want without having to rearrange manually over here in the left-hand pane. And then when you're ready to export the images for your blog, you can hit the Stomp It button, and it'll shoot those out to the folder that it'll save in. If you have an even bigger group of images, you can make a selection by shift clicking, or you can command click them individually, and you can rearrange bits and pieces in here to your little heart's desire. One of the things that we initially wanted to be able to do with BlogStomp was to have branded images to go out there on the interwebs. The reason is that regardless of security settings or how much we safeguard our images, people are going to share your images with or without your consent, and it's better in our minds to have branded images out there, so that if one of your photos ends up on Pinterest or somewhere like that, people have a way to get back to you. They have a way to find you. They can at least see your company name or brand. So let's jump into our settings menu, and let's mess with some of our styles here. You'll notice that BlogStomp it comes preloaded with a selection of different styles for different looks. Some folks prefer to have kind of a tab across the bottom. Some folks just want a border and image separators. Let me grab a couple images here real quick. And so in the settings pane, you can see a preview of what your style will look like upon export. So we can see that because we set the default in the earlier pane, we've got an image width of 1800 that's set up properly for our blog. Border and margin pertains to the white area outside the images and the white area between the images. You can either set these individually, like if you want a broader border with a narrower margin, or maybe you want just a margin with no border at all. You can control that here, or if you want that to be consistent across the border and margin, you can lock that so that you can then adjust those together like that. We can begin to customize our style perfect for the look of our blog or website or whatever use you've got in mind. You can even add a stroke around the images individually, or the whole Stomp group as a whole. Coming down here, you'll see tab height. If you wanted to add a tab at the bottom, kind of give it that Polaroid photo look to it, you can add that there. Sometimes this makes a good place to add your logo, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And we've added some more decorative features like rounded corners, if that's the look that's right for your brand. And you also see we have here the JPEG quality setting. This is an important one because we value image quality very highly. We take it very seriously. So we want your images to look as best they can online. Per our experience, that happens when you choose a JPEG quality setting of 85 or higher. But within that range, just that 85 to 100 range, you get a pretty wide range of resulting file sizes in there. So what we usually recommend is that you kind of test with it, do some test stomps, do the same image in the same size format at 85, 89, 93, 97, and see how that comes out on your end. I typically leave mine at the default of 95. It makes for a little higher file size. So yeah, in some cases, if I've got a blog post that has 120 images, I might see some slow page loading. But again, my pro photo site does smart loading or whatever it's called, where it'll load just groups at a time. So I don't see that slowness that much when I'm viewing my page. Moving on from there, let's add some logos here. I'm going to show a couple of different options for adding a logo. Let's see. First, I'm going to start with just my standard brand logo. You'll notice it drops it right in the center. For me personally, I use, you see my signature for my logo. And for me, I just like the notion of kind of signing my work. So as painters often will do, I like my logo in the bottom right-hand corner. So in this pane, you'll see the centering lines come up if you're near the center of your image. But I'm going to bring it down here to the corner. And then I want it to stay right here in this bottom right-hand corner for all the images that come out of BlogStomp. So I'm actually going to lock that to the right edge and lock it to the bottom. And you'll notice this message changes as you hit those lock keys. So it's going to remember that you want your logo positioned exactly 12 pixels from the right edge and exactly 2 pixels from the bottom edge. Some variations of that would be if I wanted my logo centered, I follow this centering line down and I leave it kind of right here at the bottom. And if I have it locked at the bottom, it will remember that pixel dimension, but it'll also remember that I want it 50%. So it's not remembering a pixel dimension from the right edge. It's remembering that I want it centered up on the entire frame. And I'll come back and show more of that in just a bit. So let me put this back here on my bottom right. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And when I go back into freestyle mode out here, you'll see that all these images that I click through, my logo is on the bottom right-hand corner. So something interesting just happened that I want to point out. You'll see that I've got my horizontal image with my logo, with my signature logo down here on the bottom right-hand corner. But if I click the image above, this vertical image, it looks like my logo got significantly smaller. And I want to point out why that's looking like that. I've set my default in BlogStomp to make my images 1800 pixels wide. That means from the outside of this white border to the outside of this side of the white border is 1800 pixels. This logo file is 144 pixels wide, and that won't change. But when I go, so this image is 1800 pixels by approximately 1200 pixels tall. But when I go to a vertical image, we're still 1800 pixels wide, except on the vertical now, we're at 2700 pixels approximately. That means that my 144 pixel logo file has not changed in size, but relative to the overall frame, it looks smaller because this is a much larger file overall. So that's just a word to the wise as you're clicking through and as you're experimenting with BlogStomp. Your logo size on the final output is not changing, but the apparent size is changing relational to the overall size of the stomped image. So now if I get my frame here and I make it to where I'm happy with it and I hit the Stomp It button, you can see it exporting down here, and now it has sent those photos in that single JPEG stomped file to a folder that BlogStomp has created on my desktop called Stomped. And when I get done with this process and I want to review my images, I simply open up my Stomped folder and everything's in there, and it's ready to go up onto my blog. So as I'm going through, I can take images from Denise's wedding day here, and I can group similar images. Maybe I want to have kind of a narrative effect. I just want to tell the story as I felt it in the room. So I can group some of these images here, and I can make some arrangements and adjustments here. In freestyle mode, if I decide, you know what, my logo is kind of cluttered here on the bottom right, it looks like the bottom left might be a better spot for it. All I have to do is grab that logo, drag it to the other side of the frame, and release. And now when I hit stomp it, it'll stomp this with my logo in the bottom left-hand corner, just like I wanted it. By default, when the next image loads, that logo is going to go exactly right back to the spot where I saved it in settings, because that's what I set as my default. So we can go through and move these around. I might even want to put it in the top left or in somewhere else on the layout. And for the ones that I just want to be single standalone images, I can just hit stomp it, and it'll move on to the next image. So let's go back to settings. I want to show a couple of other options in the settings pane specific to styles. We've been making our adjustments so far specific to the white border style at the top here. It's one of our preloaded styles. I'm going to switch to white tab to get a little bit different look. Now this frame you'll see has default an 80 pixel tall tab. I'm going to change that to 100 pixels. What the tab allows you to do, it allows you to add a logo to your images, but sometimes you don't want the logo to be on top of your image. So now instead of using a white logo with a bit of lowered opacity, I'm going to use a darker logo that'll just live right down here at the bottom. And again, I'm going to lock this to the bottom of the app once I've got it kind of centered up in the tab. And it's going to stay centered left to right on the frame because you can see that noted here in the comment there. And so when I click OK here, you'll notice that we've switched to this white tab style. And now as I click through the different photos here, or build collages like this, the borders and margins are consistent with what I've set in there. I've got the tab there, and I've got my logo down at the bottom. One of the reasons that I will use multiple styles is because I don't send photos just to one place online. I will prep photos in BlogStomp for my blog, and those will be consistent to this 1800 pixel wide, no tab, just a simple white border kind of layout. Sometimes I will prep stuff specifically for use on Pinterest or to send to a coordinator. And so for some of those, I might have a different layout entirely. In fact, let me do this. We're going to do no border and no margin on this one. But I'll use a different logo, like this one that I'll send to coordinators might just be my URL. So I'm fond of my logo. It is actually my signature, and I like that when I put some images up on my blog, when people are already on my website, they just see my logo. It's consistently branded throughout the images there. But if I'm sending images to a vendor, to a coordinator, to a florist, if I'm wanting them to be able to share the images, I want people to be able to find their way back to me. So for me, the best way to do that is to include a style that just contains my web URL. So again, I'm going to lock this to the right and to the bottom. And for this style, again, I can move this around on the frame, or even put it, if I'm worried about someone, cropping or stealing the image, I can put it in a really conspicuous spot like that. But for me, it's just not so much insurance that people aren't going to steal and reuse my photos, but it's just one more opportunity for me to get my name and my web URL out there. Another thing that I'll often do for those, if I'm sending images to a vendor, first of all, I'm going to rename this style vendor. so that I remember which one that is. Often I'll send them a slightly smaller version. They're sometimes not using the same sort of blog template. Just to minimize the overall file size, I might make this one 85. So the image quality is still going to be there, but it's a slightly smaller file size upon stomping the image. So the next thing that I want to show in settings, probably the most prominent place that I prep images for is Facebook. And before I get into the style there, I just want to notate that Facebook is amazing. It's fantastic. It's a part of our lives and our culture now. And as much as some of us may want to, we cannot get away from it. However, an important thing to remember is that Facebook is not a photo sharing service. Facebook is a social media app or a social media website. And what that means for us as photographers is that Facebook, putting this bluntly, they don't care how good your images look online. What they care about is saving space on their servers. So every image, bar none, every image that we send up to Facebook goes through a compression process on Facebook's end and per Facebook's preferences and guidelines. And there's absolutely nothing that you or I or any of us can do about it. So what we need to keep in mind is that if we send images to Facebook based on Facebook's sizing recommendations and preferences, we will always have the best possible outcome, even though Facebook will still crush our images and sometimes they will look pixelated and just gnarly. But let's all keep in mind, let's all agree together right now that Facebook is a great way to share images widely, but it is not the best place to share images at their most pristine and their best looking sort of opportunity. So let's look at this. We've got a style built in to BlogStomp 3 that is the Facebook style. And this is built around Facebook's recommendations. Facebook recommends that we upload photos at 2048 pixels on the longest edge. And because file size is Facebook's priority, we've set this to export at a JPEG quality of 85. In our own independent tests, we've determined that Facebook's compression will sometimes take an image, compress an image down to a JPEG quality of around like 43 or 45. We do not recommend that you export at that quality level in BlogStomp, but feeding Facebook the smallest and highest quality file that we can will help to reduce some of the effects of Facebook compression. So we've built this set to the longest edge of 2048. Longest edge is a little different than the way most of us want our images sized for our blog. Let me pause real quick and talk about that. My blog has a column width of 900 pixels, so that means I want all of my images to scroll vertically with the edges aligning. So I want all my images 900 or for Retina 1800 pixels wide. Another option that we have here is to set the longest edge setting so that your horizontal images for Facebook are 2048 pixels wide. Your vertical images are 2048 pixels tall, and they of course will be narrower than 2048 because we've set to the longest edge. You'll see when you click around in some places here, you'll get this notice that says, sorry, this setting is locked down. Take a look and read these as you're going through in BlogStomp, because these are for your information and edification and protection. This one says, sorry, this is locked down. These settings are tuned for Facebook. If you'd like to change them, you'll need to duplicate this style, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So we've locked down some of these because this is specific to Facebook settings. What we can do, we can adjust the JPEG quality slightly, although I really don't recommend it. You can adjust borders and tabs in this pane, and we can add a logo. Now, because Facebook's sizing is larger than the images that I send to my blog, I actually use a different logo for use on Facebook. And what I do with my logos is I size them to the correct size outside of BlogStomp. That way, when I bring them in, they're exactly where I want them to be, so that I don't have to do any resizing. We have, I'm going to go ahead and mention this, we have a resizing slider in BlogStomp. Please don't use it. I say that because for logos with delicate curved lines, letters, script fonts, anything that's handwritten, similar to my signature logo here, the more you resize it in the app, the more naff it's going to look in the end result. So please do your sizing outside of BlogStomp in Photoshop or InDesign or wherever you size your logo PNGs, and do that prior to bringing them into BlogStomp. So again, I've got this logo here. I'm going to lock right and lock bottom. In fact, I think I've got a different logo here. Here we go. I'm going to use this one because this goes on Facebook. This logo has my signature of my first name, but then it has my last name down below as well. So I'm going to use this one for Facebook. That way, if people who I'm friends with on Facebook share it to their friends, it's just a one more touch of letting folks find me. It's got my first and last name on it. So for the different styles that I've got set up in my copy of BlogStomp, I have probably a half dozen or better different logos or URL PNGs that I use for the styles. So again, I want it to be consistent with my blog in that I want to keep it on the bottom right here. So I'm going to lock right and lock bottom, and off we go. So similar to the images that I'm stomping for my blog, I can click through and I've got my logo there, or I can obviously build my my multi-image frames however I want them to go up on Facebook. And when I hit stomp it, we're off to the races. If I want to duplicate, if I want to create a style that's similar to one that's already existing, but I want to make some changes to it, I can use this button here and duplicate, and you'll see that it adds a new style at the bottom, and it's called Facebook Duplicate, meaning that it's copied all the settings from the original style, and it's made them now editable. So in the Facebook style, if you remember, we can't make certain changes like longest edge or image width. We can't change the size setting because those are set to Facebook's recommendations. But in this duplicate style, we can. So we can change settings from image width, which is what I use for my blog, again, keeping all the left and right edges consistent as you scroll down my blog page. Or I can change it to longest edge, which means that the overall longest edge of the resulting stomped file will be whatever we set it to here. So one of the reasons that I use duplicate styles is maybe for consistency's sake. So for example, my Facebook style, I want my logo to be in the bottom right, but because I don't want to drag things back and forth and that sort of thing, maybe I want to create a duplicate style with my logo in the bottom left. So that way, as I'm going through and prepping the images for Facebook, I can choose the, I'll call this one Facebook Left, and I can rename this other one to Facebook Right, and that way I can simply choose between the two to get the different looks, the different logo placement without dragging each time. One of the areas where having these similar but duplicated styles is really handy is that the geniuses on our dev team have created some shortcuts for us. You've got your styles listed here on the left, and if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got 6 different styles that are in place right now. One of my favorite features of BlogStomp 3 is that using the number keys above your keyboard, you can do a quick stomp based on the order of the styles in that list. So if I want to stomp for Facebook, I know that number 5 is my Facebook Right style that looks like this, and number 6 is my Facebook Left style that looks like that. So I can go through and hit 6, and then I can hit 5, and then I can hit 5 again, and then I can hit 6 again, and it makes for a really quick workflow just to pound through those. In fact, on my main computer, I have rearranged the order over here, and number 1 is called blog right, and number 2 is a duplicate of that called blog left. So I just kind of plow through hitting 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 in freestyle mode to make really, really quick work of prepping these images for my blog. So that is definitely one of my favorite new BlogStomp 3 features. Another, golly, I'm gonna hit on a couple of these real quick because the boys in the back room have really done a killer job with some formatting stuff. Right? We talked about how we can drag and swap images to get the image placement just right. Another of the new features is we've created a cropping module in BlogStomp 3. So if you mouse over an image, you see this control bar come up on the top of each image, on the top of the image that you're moused over. And on the top right, you see a broken line square. And if you click that, it will open our cropping pane. And in here, you'll find you can either grab control points and adjust the crop just how you want it. And you'll notice that in the preview on the right, it'll change real time, and you can see what the resulting stomp group will look like. Or you can choose these pre-formatted ratios and just have all sorts of customization control over the crops. Some of these we have built hotkeys in for, and I'll come back out of here and show you that right now. So let me grab a group of images like this, and we'll see that these are all straight out of camera, or the format is straight out of camera, 3:2 ratio. So if we wanted to make all of these square, if you hit the S key on your keyboard, it will crop them all to square. A nice quick way to do that. Say we do that and we change our minds. You know what? I really want to go back to full ratio, to 3:2 ratio. We'll hit the F key to go to 3:2. And if you know what, square wasn't right, 3:2 isn't right, we want somewhere in the middle, you can use the D key, and it'll crop to a 4:3 ratio. Slightly more square than the straight out of camera, but not quite as square as a 1:1 ratio. So you can scroll through or tap through SDF and control some of those really quickly. This has been really handy when I'm again I'm plowing through my image prep and trying to get onto other things. That's what we're after here. So you'll notice also, if you look down here at the logo, because we've locked it to the right and to the bottom, it's maintaining that pixel dimension from the bottom and right corner so that there's consistency all throughout our images. And when we're ready to go, we can hit stomp it, or we can hit the enter key, the return key on the keyboard. And that will do the business. So let's jump back into the settings pane real quick. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on briefly, and that is in the initial setup wizard, it asked what size we wanted to export our images, to stomp our images. And I mentioned that my website is Retina savvy. This one has become more and more important and more apparent over the last little while, because more folks these days are using computers with high definition or Retina screens, and so previously stomped images. So if I were stomping my images at 900 pixels instead of 1800, certain websites will display this image at what looks like 900 pixels. But if you're on a Retina monitor, you've got twice the pixel density that a standard monitor has. So we've heard from folks who have written in saying, how my pictures look really bad, they look grainy, or they look pixelated. And the reason is that they're seeing a 900 pixel image displayed at 1800 pixels, for example, or a 1000 pixel image displayed at 2000 pixels. The thing to keep in mind is that the best plan, especially if your website is retina responsive, is to stomp your images at that 2x size, so that you're viewing a one-to-one pixel representation of your images. We've all done it before in Photoshop or in similar, where you zoom in on a photo and you get past 100%, and things really start to fall apart quickly. Bitmap images don't zoom in well past that 100% mark. So being aware of what you're looking at and how you're viewing your images is really important. Knowing what you're seeing when you're seeing it is something that's it's critical to putting your best face forward with your images online. So if you have questions about that or want to dive into that further, I'll go ahead and give our support email out, because we'd be happy to talk through or help diagnose more on a one-on-one basis. But we can be reached at info@stompsoftware.com. That's INFO at STOMPSOFTWARE.com. And if you have questions, if you're unsure, please reach out to us. We would much rather, we'd love to take the time with you to dig into that on a one-on-one basis, so that you're confident with the quality of the images that you're putting out there and into the ether, as it were. So now let's talk about this. We talked about freestyle mode and how you can use command click to build collages, and you can use mix it up to cycle through and to see all sorts of different options. There is another mode in BlogStomp that is super rad, and it is known as batch mode. So in some cases, I don't want to build collages. I just want to brand my images individually. Usually I'll do this for Facebook, where I don't want grouped images. I just want each individual image to be able, so that I can tag the people in it individually. They can share them individually. They can use them as profile pictures or share them to their friends, and just kind of get the images out there. And I want to do that really fast. I don't want to click through and hit stomp it and then go to the next one and hit stomp it and then go to the next one and hit stomp it. There should be a one-click option for that, and luckily there is. If you select the first image in batch mode and hit the stomp it button, it will go through and resize and export every single image individually with your logo wherever you have it set. And you can see right here at the bottom, it's giving you a progress bar. There's 67 images, and it's just an image every couple of seconds. And those are, again, sized perfectly for your blog. It's got your sharpening settings in place. It's got your logo on it, and any other border or style options that you've got set. So we'll give that a few more seconds to wrap up, and then we'll show you some more fun stuff. So as that wraps up here, we're going to dig into some other fun stuff in the settings pane. Before we do that, I'm going to import some other images so we've got something pretty to look at while we do this. You'll notice if you're in batch mode, if you're not able to select multiple images, it's because you're in batch mode. So make sure if you're wanting to build collages that you click back over to freestyle mode, and then you can shift click or command click or control click away. So let's talk about publishing. Another one of the cool things that, well, actually we built it into BlogStomp 2, but we've continued it in BlogStomp 3, is the ability to publish your photos directly to certain channels. So we'll start with blog. I'm going to set up a new blog here, and my blog type. Oh, sorry. We're going to add down here on the left, we're going to add a new blog, and I'm going to call it CGP blog. And it is a WordPress. The URL is this. And then I'm going to add my username and my password. Once I've got username and password in place, I'm going to test my connection. And what BlogStomp is going to do, it's going to look for information. It's going to look for the last written post. It could be a published post or a draft. And when I hit the test connection button, oh, golly, my password's incorrect. Sorry, I'm new here. So it found an untitled draft post that I had uploaded last week. But if this had, if there had been a named post, it would have said, "Congratulations, we found Alexis and David's engagement session," and that means that it is able to connect using the URL and the login details that I've got in place. So now that I'm connected, I'm going to click OK, and this is the blog pane, the blog publishing pane. In here, I can give my blog title a post, sample blog post, and I can write content. This is content. And then I can begin to add images. So on a typical wedding, I can either select this pane down here at the bottom. It's referencing all the images that are in my stomped folder. So everything that we did just a while ago in freestyle mode and in batch mode, you'll see we've got some multi-image composites, and we've got some single images. Again, these are all branded and sized appropriately for my blog. And this is where we're referencing which folder. If you decide to save your images in a different place, then you can tell BlogStomp to look in that other place for the folders, or for the images that you want to send to your blog. For now, so we can either select all if we want everything to go up at once, or what I prefer to do, because from each wedding, I sort my images based on details, getting ready, ceremony, stuff like that. But sometimes that puts things out of order. Like I don't want reception details to show up in my blog before the getting ready photos. So you can click through in whatever order you choose, and you'll see that it's inputting those images in line in the order that you're clicking through. So once you get the images selected in the order that you want, you can choose your category, your blog category over here. Quick point of note, if you get to the blog pane and you see a message right here that says error getting categories, that means that something is wrong in your blog connectivity and your login, and it would be a good idea to go back and re-enter your login details. And so make sure if you see error getting categories that you go back to settings in your blog setup pane and make that change. But once you have got it here and you've got your images in place, you can publish your blog post or upload as a draft. For the sake of this exercise, I'm gonna upload as a draft, and then BlogStomp will send those up to your blog. You can also create Facebook albums in a similar way. So you go to the Facebook tab here. You can name the gallery. And you can add a description for the gallery. You can add image descriptions under each image. For me, I like to use a custom one and just use my URL. And then you have the option here to upload to your personal Facebook page or to a business page. So you can make that selection there. And when you go to share the album, now I've not connected this to my Facebook just yet, but I'll show you what it looks like when you go to do that. I'm going to hit share album. Just kidding. Apparently it remembered my Facebook login. So it seems the pop-up windows aren't showing up in the webinar, but notifications and certain progress things will show up. It will come up in front of your BlogStomp window and it'll show you what's happening. So right now it's showing that it's uploading 6 of 12 images, 7 of 12 images to this new album on Facebook. And once that's done, you'll be able to go to your Facebook page and see what all you've uploaded in the new album. So what I like to do as soon as my upload is complete is I go to that album, and then I like to tag my clients, my subjects, the bride and groom, any family members with whom I'm connected on Facebook, just so that they get a notification that there are images of them to be viewed and to be seen. And it also, their friends, the people they're connected with, will also see a notification that Denise was tagged in a photo on Facebook. And it just helps to get those photos spread a little more widely. So let's do a couple more things. Let's have some fun now. Another set of pretty cool tools that the boys in back have added to BlogStomp 3 are a set of design tools or features that will allow you to do more than simply watermark your images. And here's what I mean. So we've got a set of photos here from the aquarium, and we can rearrange stuff here. But what I want to do, I want to add some text content to this, but I don't want to put the text on top of an image. So I'm going to go up here to this icon, and I'm going to click that, and it's going to open our color box pane, which sadly is not showing up in this display. But it'll open up. It'll let you pick the dimensions of your color box, and it'll let you pick a color. And it actually has an eyedropper type color pick tool. So I'm going to pick one of these really awesome kind of aqua teal blues that I'm seeing in here. And then when I click OK, you'll see it adds that color box to my arrangement. And then of course I can go in and rearrange where stuff sits and how stuff looks. And in fact, I'm going to open up the crop pane, make this a square so that I have a little bit better option here for adding the text. So so now I can come up here to my text tool. The A is in the box here, and I can begin to write text copy like, I love the aquarium. And I can bring that in and rearrange it here. If I double click on that, I open up the text control box again. I can change the color and the size of the font, and of course change the font itself. And some of this you're seeing change. Yeah, you're seeing it change real time there in the app. And so yeah, let's do like this right here. And so this is something that I've used for my son's birthday party last summer, for example. We sent out a little e-flyer, so I put some photos of him and some photos of the activities we'd be doing for his birthday party, and then added some text copy in here, and even a couple more lines like Saturday at noon. And you can kind of design little flyers or info cards, or you know, I know of some folks who use these for to make birth announcements to share online, or even kind of save the dates. Things that you can toss around to your friends on Facebook or in emails and stuff like that. So that's kind of a fun extra feature that didn't exist before in BlogStomp, and I really quite like it. This is a time where I might be more prone to doing some things like rounded corners or you know, some of that kind of stuff. So I think I'll leave that bit alone for now. I'll leave that to your own exploration and experimentation. So have fun with that bit. Yeah, maybe if you end up making some of those tag stomp software in Facebook, so we can see what you're putting together, we'd love to see what you're doing. So we are kind of nearing the 50-minute mark, which is when we had set aside some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to clear some stuff out here and get ready for some questions that folks will be asking. I see Pinterest posts in the notes, and that's not something that I talked about in settings. Oh, no, that's in blog. I'm sorry. In the blog, when you set up your blog post, you can enable pin this buttons for your image, and it adds a pin it button to each image in the post. You can click that to enable that. And that way, when your site visitors, if they see something they really love, they have the option to upload that or link that in Pinterest. I hope that answers the question at hand. Any other questions jump to mind, you guys? Logo positioning is another question. Let's talk again about logo positioning. So in your settings and styles menu, you can, when you add a logo, it'll drop it again right in the center, and you'll see the center lines enabled whenever you're moving it around near the center, either the horizontal or vertical center of the window. You can drag your logo to, well, anywhere on the frame. My preference is to put it in or near a bottom corner, and then once it's in place, you can lock it to the right edge or the bottom, or if it's if you prefer to have it up to the top, you can lock it to the top edge. But BlogStomp will remember how many pixels you have decided that you want your logo to be from the edges that you've decided to lock it to. And then by default, every new image that opens up in your preview pane will have that setting applied. So for this image, you see it's 11 pixels from the right edge, 3 pixels from the bottom edge. When I hit OK and go back to the main preview window, that's exactly where that logo file is placed on the frame. If you have your logo, again, if you have your logo at the bottom in the center, if you release it near the center line, it will lock it to the center. And you can see right down here, your logo will be positioned at 50% across. And if you want that locked to the bottom, so it's that specific dimension from the bottom, you'll notice this changes to a pixel dimension rather than a percentage. If you don't use the lock buttons, then BlogStomp is going to remember how far from dead center the logo was saved. So if you drag it to right here and hit release, then it's going to remember a percentage away from center for that logo placement. If you use the lock buttons, that percentage will change to a pixel dimension based on the edge rather than based on the center of the frame. I hope that's clear. Grace wants me to point out that you can also use your arrow keys to nudge the logo up and down, left and right, to get an exact. So if I've got it in the corner here, I've got it's -2 pixels from the bottom edge, meaning it's below the edge a little bit. So I can nudge that down or up to make that position absolutely perfect where I want it to be. Well, guys, that I guess wraps up our Intro to BlogStomp webinar. We are super glad that you were here and that you joined us for this. It's been fun. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out via email. Again, our email address is info@stompsoftware.com. And the crew and I would be happy to answer those questions for you, talk through any specifics on blog publishing or sizing for Facebook or for use online, or just any darn thing else you want to talk about. This webinar has been recorded and it will remain at this link. So anything you want to reference back to, please feel free to save this link or click back up to it anytime you like. With that, we will bid you adieu and say see you next time.